Hello, cacao lovers and cacao tribe. Today is Self-Love Sunday, and I just wanted to make a really quick video before I head off to work in this beautiful garden, and talking a little bit about self-love and how I believe we can't practice self-love unless we first address self-worth. We have to believe that we are worthy of loving ourselves and of loving one another, and we really have to cultivate that sense of high level of self-worth before we can really embody what it means to love ourselves. And there was something that I listened to the other day which I thought was really relevant and addressed what stands in the way from us cultivating a healthy, high level of self-worth. And this was by Brené Brown. And what Brené Brown was saying, that if we want to live wholeheartedly and practice wholehearted living, which for me means loving oneself and loving each other and having a deep level of fulfillment and self-worth in oneself, then we need to practice self-compassion. And so if we need to have a high level of self-worth, we have to practice self-compassion. However, the biggest barrier to self-compassion is dysfunctional perfectionism. And what is dysfunctional perfectionism? I'm sure there's a lot of perfectionists in the group, or people who've been told they're perfectionists before, and I think that perfectionism really can benefit in a lot of ways. It can help you achieve some of the things you're most proud of. It can help you really just go for it and not hold back. It can help you always do your best. However, when it becomes dysfunctional, that's when we set relentlessly high standards and expectations for oneself that really can never be met. And we shame ourselves for never doing a good enough job. And through that shaming process, it's also inhibiting our sense of self-worth. So we have to let go of dysfunctional perfectionism, practice self-compassion in order to have a deeper sense of self-worth, which leads to wholehearted living, which is loving oneself. And touching on that, I think with dysfunctional perfectionism and talking about self-worth, it's really important to look at shame. Many of us are actually fluent in shame. We're fluent in the dialogue of shame. Not only shaming each other in subtle ways, but also shaming of ourselves, because we've been shamed in the past, essentially for our being. And once we're shamed for our being, then the shaming process becomes very much subconscious. We don't even recognize we're doing it a lot of the time. And when looking at the mind-body connection and looking at shame, an example might be you've done something and your boss or your friend or your partner or your family will say something like, "Oh, you know, I expected you to do this again," or "Oh, you did it again," or "How typical of you," and really shame you for your being. And in that moment, you actually have a physiological reaction. It's the mind-body connection. And the thing is, our body actually feels like it's being attacked. Our body feels like it's being wounded. And over time, we memorize that way of being so that we fall into that space and we react to shame by shaming ourselves and making an agreement to when somebody shames us. So I think something that I learned, and a really good tool for rewiring of your mind and rewiring your mind-body connection to overcome shame and to replace it with something else, is through this exercise. And the opposite of shame might be seen as honoring of oneself and honoring of one's self-worth. And so next time, one way of really increasing your level of self-worth and self-love is by honoring yourself. and reclaiming that back. So next time somebody shames you, whoever it is, and it's usually verbally, somebody will shame you. You can see it in their behavior and their actions, but usually it gets transmuted verbally because words hold symbology, and we agree to that, and it becomes part of who we are. So next time somebody shames you through words, honor yourself and reclaim your self-worth and make that commitment to yourself by saying, somebody says, oh, you know, you didn't finish your work, how typical of you, you're always like this. I would stop and I would look at them and I would say, thank you for letting me know, and for being observant. You know, I'm really gonna do my work and finish it by this afternoon. Thank you for pointing that out, but I also really don't appreciate you talking to me in that way. I don't appreciate you using that language to communicate with me, and I just wanted to make that really clear. So thank you. And so that's a really subtle way that we can communicate with one another and put up our boundaries so people don't shame us, and also it's a reflection for themselves to see how maybe they've been talking to us or treating one another. And yeah, so pretty much the point of this video was that self-love comes down to self-worth, and self-worth and self-compassion needs to become part of a daily practice where we honor ourselves. Have a beautiful day, everyone.